the person that's asking that question is going to be here folding their arms and saying, you're dancing around it. And I know what they're asking. I know what these folks are asking is, do you spar? Right. That's really the question that we get asked. And I get asked over and over again is, do you spar? Do you account for the unpredictability of a fight? Do you get hit? Do you take hits? What do you do if somebody doesn't attack you the way that you want to get attacked? And I of course have my own training methodologies that I believe are important with regards to that and that sort of stuff. But like from your experience, you know, your personal belief, the way that you came up in the art, has there been things that your instructors, your teachers have done to give you a taste of sparring in a sense that was satisfactory to you, where you're like, yeah, I believe I can do that, or better, I know that I could do that. I have done that against a resisting person, and I know it works.
So this is currently my take on that type of question. I'm not going to dance around this. This is what I think. If you are Scott Bragg's opinion, if you're training in this martial art and your training revolves around, when you say, let's train realistically, and now we decide, okay, I'm going to put the gloves on, you're going to put the gloves on, and we're going to go at it. We're going to see, you know, we're just going to see how well this stuff works. I think you're already behind the ball. I think you've already given up the most important facet of this martial art training, specifically as it relates to Toshindo, in that if I am squaring off with you to see who's going to do what, I've already given away the fact that I know something. And to me, I'm just going to use the word impossibility because that's what's flowing from me right now. It's impossible to let the true dynamic of what Toshindo represents and what its true power is when I willingly square off with someone to say, let's see what we can do. Because I'm already putting the opponent on notice that I know something, that I'm aware of something. And to me now, I'm just showing this person, it doesn't turn into, let's see what happens when it's real. Now it's, let's see who can get away with what. Because now you know that I know that you know. And to me, to me, that is, while it is realistic in the sense that someone's really going to get hit, someone's really going to get kicked, or someone's really going to get choked out, there is so much that is ignored that led up to that, that I think has taken the reality of what it is that creates the dynamic of our training. That's my thought on it. Now, is it fun to put the pads on and to play? Yes, but that's, to me, that's all you're really doing is you're playing. Because I guarantee you right now, if it were you and I, right, in that wonderful space of yours there, if we put on, we do randori, right? But we know, yeah, we do randori, and we could put on gloves and do randori, but we already know going into it that someone is here to win and someone is here to lose. And if we said, let's kick it up a notch, then we run into the possibility of someone getting hurt.
Certainly.
Right? Like I know if I'm the aggressor guy, I already know that you have skill. You already know that I have skill. I don't want anyone to know what skill I have until they are experiencing what's going on. And that's just my take on you know,
I love it.
That type of realistic training.
Well, I think you hit it. Like realism is not, it's not a simple thing. Like if we're going to be realistic, if it's a fight in the parking lot, just like you said, I don't want to give away that I know something. I don't want to give away, you know, what's in my, what am I going to use? You know, that's not very ninja of me to let somebody know that I know something. But, you know, if we're going to get in and spar and we're going to get on the mat and resist against each other, and we're going to be realistic in a self-defense scenario, then we're going to be grabbing for eyes and grabbing for face and trying to legitimately injure someone. And again, that can't work for so long. But I also hear the benefit, and I believe in the benefit of limiting what we're going to do and doing an exercise. And it's a randori exercise. I'm not going to say it's real fighting. Even if I'm really doing MMA, yes, they're really punching me. Yes, they're really kicking me, but there is a ref. There are things. So there's things that I will let happen in that scenario that I wouldn't want to allow outside of that, right? And that's coming from somebody that's done some MMA. And I regularly train in what we call force on force scenarios. I grapple, I spar. Occasionally I'll do some kickboxing. I'm not a fan of head trauma anymore, so I don't do much of that. You can tell by my nose again, like I've been hit plenty of times, and I'm good. But I do understand that. I do understand the confidence that comes from that sort of thing, but I believe that it's not the only way to train, right? I think if you need it, right?
Sure.
I was a person that needed it. I doubted it until I doubted the efficacy of my choke until I legitimately applied a choke to somebody that didn't want me to do it, right? I also got a much more confidence in it when somebody did it to me when I was trying, as hard as I could to resist, short of stabbing somebody in the eye or cutting them with my knife or doing something like that.
Right.
So I think the training should be multifaceted to whatever degree the student needs it to be.
Sure.
Right? If somebody needs it, I believe there's a time and place, and a lot of young folks' lives where they got to test it out. They got to test themselves out, and I think that's fine as long as you find a place that you can do that responsibly. So I think you and I both have this long answer that, yeah, it's realistic. It just depends on what realistic means to you, and don't just make realistic only what do you do when you shake hands and do a fist bump and then get into spar or grapple with each other. There's a lot of other elements of realism. I mean, this is a dojo, right? But how unrealistic is this as a space that you would get into an altercation? There's no cars, there's no curbs, there's no walls, there's nobody else. There's plenty of space. The floor is padded. There's padded stuff on the sides, so you're not going to get hurt. So, right from the get-go, we're setting it up for an experience, a growth opportunity, and we're going to push people towards pressure. But
Right.
It's not hard training from the beginning. It's difficult training sometimes.
Yes, and I think, the difficulty of the training can be, now I'm taking this idea of what realism is to a different, I don't want to say level, but different aspect. But before I get there are ways that you can break up the training to give someone a realistic experience. Like there are times when I'm trying to demonstrate to a group of training partners why it is that I'm cutting a certain angle, or why it is that I'm covering myself a certain way while I'm moving. So I'll tell my training partner, I won't say, when I'm ready, throw a punch. I'll just say, when you feel like you have the opportunity, then let it go. And don't hold back on this one, because I'm not going to counter it. I'm going to move with it. Okay. But I won't tell you, okay, I'm ready. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready. I won't tell you that. So you just go when you feel you're ready to go. And there are a lot of times where, I'm there and all of a sudden here comes this thing. And if I don't move, chances are, I'm going to end up with a split lip, or, a busted nose or a busted eye. So there is the reality in that training where I'm really going to punch at you. I'm really going to try to knock you out. And then that's just serves as an example. Now, we don't do that as a class because people get knocked out, right? If they don't have the skill to keep up with the lesson. But it's ways sometimes that we can periodically invest a realistic outcome. This is the consequence if you don't do this. And that becomes something where it's like, whoa, like the reality of that is a little disturbing and a little sobering at the same time. But within that, there is the lesson of, wow, this is possible, So again, it's not answering what that individual wanted to hear specifically, but I feel like we covered it.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, and I think it's not as cut and dry as everybody would like to have it. Now, I just got a comment online from our friend Timo. I'm not going to pronounce your last name because I'll probably mess it up, but he's from Germany, and he just
I'm going to say Musel.
Musel.
I'm just saying it.
Musel. Let it flow, man.
All right. Hey, Timo.
Sparring is important to learn the distance and control, and to learn the feeling of if somebody wants to hit or submit you. Real street fight, something else. No rules, no respect. And I agree. I enjoy doing what I would say in quotes, sparring and that sort of thing, to to have the feeling of the space and the timing and that sort of thing. And I wanted to read his quote because I had a question from him actually that came through earlier that rather than answer him directly, I told him I wanted to use it for tonight's conversation. So if you're okay with that, he
go
asked,
for it.
he sent me in a message, you know, is it easy for me to mix the jujitsu that I train in along with Toshindo and the kickboxing, or is it very different? And, you know, I wanted to take a few minutes and he said that's okay. So I guess we were okay on the pronunciation. Maybe not that's correct, but either way,
we are on a time delay, so he could be saying that's okay to multiple things.
Could be right. But either way, apologies if we mispronounce it. But I will say this: if you're training in multiple martial arts, especially if one of them is as all-encompassing and as broad as Toshindo, you may really want to get solid footing in what you're going to consider your primary martial art. So for me, Toshindo obviously is my primary martial art, and I believe that it's a fantastic primary martial art. It could be a fantastic soul martial arts study, but Toshindo, you get some skill with kicks, you get some skill with your punches, right, with striking, you get some skill with grappling sort of stuff. There's a little bit of Toshindo on the ground, there's some Toshindo with swords and sticks. So you learn this, and I believe that people who are highly skilled at taijutsu can mimic other martial arts systems really well. You know, I've seen it over and over with my training partners, and I don't know that that's always been the same coming back. Having somebody come from another background to jump into the class, it takes a little while to let go some of what they've brought with them in their training history. So I would say if you're considering cross training, first make sure you've got solid footing, and you know, a black belt in Toshindo, if you have a good school and a good teacher and you train hard, only takes, you know, 4.5, 5, 6 years to do that, and that's really short, you know, in terms of what you could invest in a lifetime of martial arts training. When I first started training in jiu-jitsu, I definitely got tense again. And when I was applying my Toshindo techniques, I sort of got tense when I was doing that, because you sort of want to be tense in jiu-jitsu at first. You want to lock things down. You want to, so wow, Mark Davis just said he wants to hear how we deal with a non-compliant individual. So for me, this was my jiu-jitsu experience at first was to be very tense with that non-compliant individual. And then when I went to Toshindo, it carried over because I believed it was real. As I got more and more skilled in jiu-jitsu, I saw the parallels in the ideas of being able to flow with an opponent, ride the energy of an opponent, and that sort of thing. So my jiu-jitsu got looser, got softer. And then my Toshindo in turn felt like it got softer. So I see a ton of parallels. And when I say jiu-jitsu now, I sort of just mean grappling. I'm not specifically mentioning the brand of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I have learned a lot and am infinitely grateful for the Brazilian jiu-jitsu that I've studied. But I see it as, you know, in ninjutsu had these Daken taijutsu and Ju taijutsu areas of study. And, you know, I can see the Shinden Fudo flows, the naturalness. I can see the Yoshin style movements in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training rules. And that's what it is to me. It's just, we were talking about playing these different games when we're sparring. And Jiu-Jitsu is just a piece of a fight that I enjoy to practice. I enjoy practicing. And when I keep it like that in my head, then it's easier for me to integrate these systems. So I like to, you know, do our randori like we're talking about, where somebody's punching or kicking and we'll do a takedown. And then once they hit the ground, one of my favorite positions is what we call ukigatame or ukigatame, where it's knee on belly position. And then it's easy to transition down to the ground if you want to control or to strike and get away from somebody. So I believe it's just given me more options.
Sure.
Right? Now, and I'll say for kickboxing, like I've done some kickboxing and done some stuff, but I'm by no means a kickboxing expert. Right. I'm definitely not a Muay Thai aficionado. I learned enough kickboxing to try to get in close to a clinch range. So, you know, I don't want to speak on integrating kickboxing into this, but what I will say is I utilized my Toshindo quite effectively several times when I was kickboxing in a kickboxing class. Our Ichimonji kata, where we drop back and shoot that lead back in, worked great for me, right? Worked great because it's sort of conventional to cover and come back with the other hand.
Right.
This idea of fading offline and sneaking that hand back in was really unconventional. I spent as much time with my right forward as I did my left forward, which again was really unconventional. Most people who strike competitively pick a side and they're known as sort of an orthodox or a southpaw striker. But because of Toshindo, I was able to switch and move back and forth, and these sort of water drops translated into slips for me. And so rather than me fitting my kickboxing into my Toshindo, what I really tried to do was take my Toshindo to the kickboxing class and test it out, right? See if I could make it work. And I'm not a professional kickboxer, but I did have enough success in it that, again, because of doing it against a resisting person, I developed the confidence in it, right? Which I believe translates when I move around.
Well, and you know, we should probably lament that by saying this may not be what most people want to hear if they're reviewing this again, but it's my opinion that what you're specifically talking about, Hardy, can start to be integrated when you've got multiple years beyond black belt of Toshindo training. Because as you know, to get a black belt, while it takes 3.5 to 4 years, you still, that entry into black belt just means you have an understanding of our basics, right? There is a whole world of principle-based movement that if you aren't connecting with that, then you'll just look at any other martial art like any other martial art and you're thinking, oh yeah, I'm just doing this, but I've got 4 years of Toshindo training and now I'm doing this other martial art. It's not the same. You have to have the wherewithal of what you're doing within the Toshindo framework and philosophy and principle-based movement to be able to even have the eyes to see, oh, this is how this needs to change with my jiu-jitsu training. You know, this is how I'm applying my Toshindo to my jiu-jitsu training. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with it that you got to be there, right? And you have to. I would agree with it if what you believe are the principles and the core principles and stuff is allowed to change, because what I believed was really important about Toshindo has certainly evolved as I've trained, right? If you were to ask me to describe Toshindo, which I'm not ready for that question right now. If you're going to ask me to lay it out, don't ask me to do that. But if you were to ask me to do that, I believe the answer I would give you today would be significantly different from what I would have given you as a black belt or as a green belt on the path. So
I mean, which is fair. My point in saying that is you just don't have the experience, right? You don't have the experience of what the dynamics of Toshindo are when you try to integrate another martial art with it. Yeah. Right? You may have in your mind that, oh, this is how we move in Toshindo, right? Because I learned this mechanical thing. This is how we move, but you're still trying to understand the why and how am I translating that movement from a psycho-emotional state, right? Not just, oh, if I position my shoulders this way, then this is what I can do. So I can just do this when I do jiu-jitsu. Doesn't work the same way.
Yeah, but what you just stated, that psycho-emotional state is such a big part of it. And that, again, is why Toshindo is so different to me, right? So many other things don't even account for that, right? So what I was able to do is take some of the training that was all physical, right? And it wasn't all physical. There were things that happened because of the intense physicality from it. Like I said, there was a confidence that came. There was a persistence and a fitness level that occurred because of that. But I was able to take this pretty purely physical expression of movement and then sort of connect it with what you were saying, the emotional context of it. If I'm feeling a certain way when I do jujitsu, I could look at it and say, I'm feeling earthy. I'm feeling real confident and stable there, but I could be rolling against a guy that has advantages in terms of size, and maybe I play an angle game and it looks a whole lot, feels a whole like water to me. I can be super connected. Sometimes I'm riding the flow, and you shut things down and I'm feeling fiery, right? And it mimics this fire projection, this fire forwardness, stopping it before the guy gets his grip, right? Or I'm bailing out of this thing before the arm bar is on, as he's just thinking it's there, right? And of course, I've been on the other end of it. I tap out quite often, right? So I'm not saying I'm great, but I can, at this point in my training, I've got 16 years in jiu-jitsu and 22 in Toshindo. So it's not, you know, I've got about as much there, but it's interesting that you can, the emotional aspect, I can tell how I feel if I was to watch myself roll, and I could tell what element I was in, you know, or at, you know, particular technique. So I think that if you're going to go down that path, you've got a real big challenge in front of you, and be patient and just train a lot, and try not to draw hard and fast conclusions about any of it, because I believe if you're honest with yourself, your opinion is going to rapidly evolve and constantly evolve about what's important, what's real, what's, you know, whether what you're doing is even correct or the right thing to do. So.